We're going to do some learning on this week's Parsha. Our learning should be in the merit of our brothers and sisters in Israel. Hashem should protect them and help them and heal them and return the hostages and help us win this war. And our Torah learning should be a merit for all of them. Amen. So this week's Torah portion is Lecha. And we're going to go through it like I usually do. We're going to go through the storyline and we're going to weave into it some deeper understandings and meanings and lessons and takeaways that we can have. It's another fascinating parsha. It reads like a great story. A lot of very unique incidents that happen here. And the main theme is Avraham, the first of our forefathers, Avraham. So Hashem tells Avraham, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Go out, leave everything behind. Go for yourself, from your land, from your relatives, from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you to a great nation. This is one of the tests that Avraham is being given. It is known that Avraham was tested 10 times by Hashem. Hashem gave him some sort of test of faith, and he passed every one with flying colors. Maybe the most famous of that is the Akedas Yitzchak, the binding of his son Isaac, where he was tested to slaughter his son. But again, it was just a test. But anyway, so this is another one of them. Lech Lecha, go out, go from your place, your world, your home, your family's home, and I'm not even telling you where you're going, to a land that I will tell you. Leave everything behind. And I think from the most important messages in this week's parsha is this one right here. We could probably sit on this first verse for quite a while. We're not going to spend too much time because we want to try to get through all of it, but there's really important lessons here. So two messages that I want to focus on that I think are worth thinking about, even if you've heard this before, worth thinking about again. And that is the importance of coming out of our comfort zone for Hashem, for our spirituality. Pushing ourselves beyond what we're comfortable doing for the sake of Hashem. For as long as our Judaism is comfortable and easy and predictable and very, comfortable for us, it's not so much of a test. We're not demonstrating our faith to Hashem. But if we can push ourselves when it's not comfortable or when we don't understand, that's where the real test is. If you agree to Judaism, if you like it, if you understand it, if you like the principles of faith, the philosophy, the morality, the ethics, if you like all that and that fits well with your beliefs, that's wonderful. That basically means you have a great moral compass, right? If your philosophy aligns with the Torah, good for you, because the Torah sets the bar of what is ethical and what is proper. But that's not a test. You're not demonstrating your loyalty to Hashem if you agree with the Torah, so to speak. The test is when you don't agree. The test is when your belief in what is proper does not align with the Torah. And now we know that the Torah is the bar. The Torah is what sets and dictates what is good and what is bad in this world. So if my moral clarity doesn't fit with the Torah, that's when I have a test. When it doesn't fit with my preconceived notions of what's right and what's wrong, that's when I'm being tested. That's when you reach greatness. So if you come across a Jewish idea and it doesn't sit well with you and you don't like it, and maybe you feel that it's not even proper and from your perspective it's not even ethical or something like that, congratulations. That's when Judaism starts. That's not when it ends. That's when it starts. That's when we have a chance to explore, to understand, to learn the Torah, to figure out, where we went wrong and how we could bring ourselves up to Hashem's standard, to God's standard of morality. So it's not when it's easy that we're demonstrating our Jewishness. It's when it's hard. It's when we don't understand. As an example, Avraham, what did Avraham excel at? Perhaps more than anything else, his mitzvah, so to speak, was chesed, was kindness. You know what that means? Chesed, the mitzvah to help someone, was not Avraham's test. If Avram was stingy by nature, then he has a test to do chesed. If he doesn't like, hospitality and helping people and feeding people and whatever, then it's a test. But Avram's nature was so aligned with chesed that the need to do the mitzvah of chesed was not his test. What was his test, so to speak? The one time that he could not do chesed. That's when he couldn't handle it. And that is the story where it was a boiling hot day and Avram wanted to have guests and he stood outside in the heat of the sun waiting. Where are my guests? Where are my guests? Where are my guests? That was a Messiah. That was a challenge Avram couldn't handle. Not having guests? No, that he couldn't handle. That's when he's pushing himself. That's when it's uncomfortable for him. Right now, Hashem doesn't want me to have guests. That is difficult. And that brings me to the second lesson. Okay, so the first lesson...
That was on the third day of his imprisonment. I mean, that was even more challenging. He was in such pain.
Yeah, he was in pain. He was, right, it was right after his bris. Yeah, exactly. That brings that home even more. So the first lesson is coming out of our comfort zone for Hashem. When a mitzvah is hard, that's where we're being tested. That's where we can demonstrate our Jewish greatness, our closeness to Hashem. When it's easy, much less of a demonstration. When the Torah says something that we don't understand, logically, philosophically, whatever it is, that's the challenge. That's when we push ourselves. That's when we're being tested, and that's when we become great. Okay? So that's lesson number one. The second lesson is in following Hashem's script for how we serve him. So on that day that it was boiling hot, Avram wanted to serve Hashem by having guests like he always does. And Hashem said, no, that's not how you're going to serve me today. You're going to serve me by not having guests. You're going to serve me by, it's a boiling hot day, and you really want it, and this is painful for you. And like you mentioned, you just had a bris. It's just not a good time to be in so much pain and anguish and whatever. And now I'm going to test you by not having guests. And of course, ultimately, he didn't have guests. The angels came. That's a story we'll get to when it comes up. So Hashem writes the script. So it's difficult. This is definitely a challenge because I know how I want to serve Hashem. And usually, hopefully, it's the way that I think Hashem wants me to serve it. You know, I'm not like writing my own religion and saying I'm going to serve Hashem in this and with funny way. No, I'm knowledgeable in the Torah. I learned the Torah. I know what the mitzvahs are. And I know how I want to serve Hashem. I like chesed. I like Torah. I like this. I like that. But really, Hashem is the one that really will tell us how to do it. So the challenge is, no matter where Hashem takes us in life, to just adapt to the way he wants us to serve Hashem at any given moment. We're following his plan. One day he wants us to serve him, or one era he wants us to serve him when we have an abundance of blessing and wealth and money and finances, and one era we might have a lot of poverty. I might prefer to serve Hashem one way, and Hashem might prefer for me to serve him another way. One day we're feeling healthy and strong and energetic, and another day we could be feeling sick, or we could be very sick. And now all of a sudden the avoda changes. The way we serve Hashem when we're sick is different than the way we serve Hashem when we're healthy. I prefer through health. You know, that's my request. But sometimes Hashem might say, no, I want to challenge you this way. One day one time we're happy and we're optimistic and we're energetic and we're joyful, and sometimes we're in pain and we're suffering, and Hashem guides us somewhere to a place of pain, a loss of some type, or any type of pain that we might be going through. And now all of a sudden Hashem's wanting us to serve him through that, within that. Sometimes we're at peace and sometimes we're at war. And the way we serve Hashem is very different. The way the Jewish people as a whole are serving Hashem, for example, right now is very different than it was a month ago. Totally different, a whole different way. No, thank you, I prefer peace. I don't prefer the wartime way of serving Hashem, but we serve Hashem the way Hashem wants us to, the way he guides us to.
But even, what's coming out of Israel, the joy, the unity, the everything, it's so powerful. And actually, it's giving me strength. They're fighting the battle. And
the unity in Israel is giving us strength.
Yeah.
But perhaps, I don't know, what if somebody would prefer no unity and the 1,400 Jews weren't murdered? I know, it's a tough question. I'm not even like,
no,
we don't know how to deal with this, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But I prefer the people who were alive and the unity.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Now we're getting in the weeds here. That's a tough
it would
place.
be nice if you would win $1.5 billion lottery.
Yeah, exactly. The point is, nobody asked my opinion in how Hashem guides me and what circumstances I have in order to serve Him. And I think another example of that is sometimes I'm in the mood of serving Hashem, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just feeling spiritual, and I want to serve Hashem from a spiritually energetic place. And that's great. That means I'm motivated, I'm doing mitzvahs, and I'm doing things, and I'm helping people, and I don't know, whatever I'm doing. And then some days I wake up and I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood of so much spirituality. And now the way I serve Hashem is very different. It's going to look different. Now it's from a place of, the emunascha ba'leilos. We praise Hashem with emuna at night. In the darkness, in the times that it's difficult, we have faith, we have to hold on. Without getting into it, all of these examples I told you all bring to us a different way of serving Hashem. Whether you're wealthy or poor or healthy or sick or in pain or in a good mood or a bad mood, whatever, all this is going to affect what Hashem wants from you at every moment.
What did you just say about davening at night when you're not feeling up to it?
So I was just quoting the pasuk that says "Lahagid baboker chastecha ve'emunascha ba'leilos," and we praise the kindness of Hashem during the day, which refers to thanking Hashem for the good times.
Right.
And emunascha ba'leilos, we hold on to our faith at nighttime, which is not literal nighttime, but refers to difficult periods that we're in.
Okay.
We navigate those through emuna, through our holding on to our faith of Hashem. Okay, so that's the messages of Lech Lecha, pushing ourselves, even though, I would mention one more point here. Avram was called Ivri, right? Avram was the first Ivri. What does Ivri mean? The word Ivri literally means the other side. That's what it means. Over means to pass over. It's the other side. A Jew is very often on the other side of the entire world when it comes to matters of spirituality and morality. Very often. You look around right now, God knows how much of this world is on the wrong side of morality right now. It's heartrending. It's despicable. It's so disgusting to read in the news of people all over the world rallying for Hamas. It's horrible. We've known this for thousands of years. We are Ivrim. We are proud to stand with the morality that God gave us, even when that means we are a very lone voice in a world that has no moral clarity. That's who we are. That's our identity. That's literally our names. That's our name. Next time somebody says, "You Jews, you got it all wrong," you say, "Yep, that's my name. My name is Ivri. I'm different. I stand on the other side of moral clarity." Yeah. Okay, fine. So that's Lech Lecha. Let's move on with the storyline. There's a lot that goes on here. So Hashem tells Avraham to go. The first place that he goes is Canaan, future land of Israel. And there Hashem shows him the land. The commentaries say that Hashem said, "Look north, south, east, and west. This is the land that I'm going to give your descendants." And at that moment, Avram had this miraculous power to actually see all four corners of Eretz Yisrael, of the land of Israel, at the same time. He somehow got a miraculous bird's eye view. He was able to see the whole thing. Hashem promised him that his descendants would inherit this land. And then there's a famine in that country, in Canaan, and he needs to go find food. So he takes his family. Now he's traveling with his family. He's traveling with Sarah. He's traveling also with his nephew Lot and their belongings, their possessions, the wealth that they had, and other people were also part of their entourage. Avraham was a sort of outreach rabbi. He would go out there and tell people about God. He brought in converts. He brought awareness of God to non-Jews of the world. He was the first, real believer in Hashem. So he had a bit of an entourage with him, and he makes his way after Canaan. He makes his way to Canaan, and then when the famine comes, so then him and Sarah, him and his wife, go down to Egypt. Again, they brought more than just them two. They go down to Egypt. So now Avram has a concern. His concern is that he's going to go into Egypt, and that the Egyptians are going to see his wife, Sarah, who was one of the most beautiful women that ever lived in all time, and he was rightfully worried that the king, Paro, was going to take her for a wife. Now the problem is that if he takes her for a wife, and Paro sees that Avram is the husband, in order to steal someone's wife, so to speak, he would kill Avram. So Avram made up that, don't say that you're my wife, say that you're my sister, and then Avram won't be killed. There's a lot of depth to this. This is not such a surface level story, but for the sake of time, we're not going to go into all of the depth. But there's a lot of underlying back and forth that was really going on in this story as well. Okay, so what happens? The second he walks in, he predicted right. The Egyptians saw Sarah and said, "Okay, this woman is for Paro." So they take Avram and Sarah against their will, and they bring them to the palace. And then Paro starts getting these unusual afflictions that the Torah says, and he understood that something, he was getting punished for something, and he put two and two together. So first of all, just in this era that they are in Paro's house, he treated Avraham well. So he doesn't see Avram as a threat right now because Avram's not the husband, Avram's a brother. So he says, okay, we're taking your sister, so to speak, but we're going to treat you well. And they gave him even goods and servants and all kinds of things. And then Paro got this kind of affliction, and he realized that something was up here. It's interesting. I didn't get a chance to research how he understood this. Like, I don't see Paro as a believer in God, right? I don't see him as like this big, spiritual person who's going to get diseased and then say, why is God doing this to me? Maybe it's because the woman here is not who I think she is.
God's. Who says he didn't have his own religion?
Interesting.
I mean, just a thought. Most of the world believed in something at that point.
Right.
The sun, the moon,
maybe
fire,
he had his
something.
own dark forces of knowledge that he had consulted with. Okay, maybe. Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody says that, but it's just a thought.
Who was I don't want to say this loud because I sound so ignorant. Who was the one that went into the Nile because he was the god?
He's also a pharaoh, but that's a title. It's like king.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so they say over here, so what happened? He summoned Avram. Paro summoned Avram and said, what is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she is your wife? So I'm just reading right now from the art scroll. He says, although Pharaoh suspected that his affliction was because of Sarah, he could not be certain that she was Avram's wife. So she made the accusation in order to draw the truth from Avram. And then when Avram didn't respond, Paro realized that his suspicion was correct. Okay, I should have just read the bottom there, so I apologize. So, very simple answer. He didn't actually know, but he suspected. And he called Avraham out on it. And he said, hey, he didn't actually know that she was his wife, but he decided to accuse him and see what his response would be. So he accused him. He was angry at him. Why didn't you tell me? Now I have this affliction. Why didn't you tell me this? And he was upset at her for not telling me this. I saw on somebody's WhatsApp status today a quote from this week's Torah portion that's like a sad truth. And he kind of said it as a joke. He said, in this week's Parsha, Paro kidnaps Sarah and then blames Avraham as the aggressor.
Wow.
Okay, that's basically what happened. He literally kidnapped his wife against his will and then starts screaming at Avraham, upset at Avraham, why didn't you tell me? What's wrong with you? As if Avraham is the problem here when he is the one who kidnapped. By the way, there's going to be more messages about kidnapping and stuff later on in this parsha. We'll get to it in a few minutes. So the Torah lives on forever, Torah lives on. Ridiculous things people say. Okay, so let's move on to the next story. What do we have next here? So he lets Avraham go. Avram and Sarah go. Avraham goes back to the land of Israel. And then he gets into this dispute with Lot. So he's traveling with Lot, who's his nephew. Lot is a questionable figure, to put it nicely. Actually, the commentators say that when Hashem told, I think I saw this from the Or HaChaim, when Hashem told Avraham, Lech Lecha, go, he never really intended that Lot be part of his journey. He meant Avraham and his immediate circle. He didn't mean Lot. But Avram had invited Lot. There's more reasons to why that might have been. But anyway, they're traveling together right now, and they get into a fight. The shepherds of Lot and Avraham are fighting with each other. The commentators explain that the cause of the fight was that Lot was letting his animals graze without a muzzle on people's lawns and people's farmlands. And that is not ethical. That is not proper to let your animals eat the crops of somebody else's belongings. Avraham, who had the moral clarity, understood that is stealing to let your animals graze on somebody else's property. So they weren't getting along. We're not meant to hang out together. Let's go our separate ways. Avram says, you choose where to go. You want to go east, I go west. You want to go west, I go east. You decide, let's split up. Let's agree to disagree and split up. So he does that. Lot chooses the plains of Jordan, which he saw as being a very fertile, well-watered land. These are the areas of Sodom and Amorah, which were later going to be destroyed, partially through stories that involve Lot. We'll get there when we get to that story. And that's the area that he decided to go live in. And now Avram is dwelling in other parts of Israel, of Canaan, of Israel. And that's it. Okay? So that's the end of that little separation of Avram and Lot. Hashem again, I think this is the third time in this parsha that Hashem reiterates his promise that Abraham's descendants will become great and will inherit the land of Israel, and it's not even the last time yet. Then there's this unusual story of the War of the Kings. Without getting into all the politics behind what started the war, there's a lot of details here. We have this large war. I don't know if I would call it a world war, but the world wasn't so settled in those days. So it very possibly was a very big portion. The Torah talks about fights from the Jordan area of Sodom and Amorah all the way to north of Damascus in Syria. So that's a big area. I mean, I know now we have fast modes of transportation, but then to get from the Dead Sea north of Damascus is quite a journey. So there's a lot of kings, a lot of lands, a lot of kingdoms, and these 4 kings that are listed in the Torah start a war against the 5 kings. I'm not going to get into all of the details of the war, but the most important thing that happened that affected Avraham is that Lot was taken captive. Lot was taken hostage by these people. He didn't do anything. He wasn't fighting. He was just living in a land of dispute, and he was taken captive. And that brought Avraham into the battle. Avraham went to rescue Lot. That's why he decided to get involved. He heard his nephew was taken hostage. He went to rescue him. I want to read through you some interesting lines from the Or HaChaim that talks about the moral obligation of the Jewish people in war when hostages are taken. Okay, it's very, very relevant idea here. So the Or HaChaim starts by explaining that the kings knew that Lot was Avraham's nephew, and that is why they took him. It was an intentional act of aggression against Avraham. They knew that he was his nephew. So he says, on the basis of this approach, we have a satisfactory explanation for the way Avraham reacted to Lot's capture. At first glance, it seems odd that before going to war to rescue Lot, Avram did not call out to the 4 kings for peace and tell them to return Lot without a fight, and warn them that if they would refuse to deal peacefully, then they would attack them, as he in fact attacked them now. But according to our approach, now that we understand that the king knew who Lot was, and they knew that he was Avram's nephew, thus it was they who initiated hostilities against Avraham by seizing his nephew, and he had no moral obligation to offer them peace. And that's what it says. And Avram heard that his brother was captured, referring to Lot, meaning he heard that even though they knew that he was Avram's nephew, they took him. By doing this brazen act, the king demonstrated that they were actually Avram's enemies, and therefore he pursued them and attacked them without offering them an opportunity to surrender peacefully. So, okay, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
So if the enemy attacks and takes hostage and starts this kind of war, what did Avraham do? He went and he killed them all. He went and he killed them, he won the war, and he rescued Lot.
So Abraham had like a small army, he had an army behind him?
Yeah, good question. There's different opinions on how many people were with him. Suffice it to say, he was vastly outnumbered. I believe some say he had like some of his entourage of his people with him, and some say it might have only been Eliezer, which is really shocking. That's two against 4 kings and the armies that they represent. Yeah.
So the 4 kings beat the 5 kings, and then he beats the 4 kings by himself.
With minimal help.
Whatever help he had.
With Hashem's help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
It's truly a miracle.
it's
It's
a lopsided war, that's all.
yes.
Yeah.
Trying to do the math in my head.
Yeah. And then again, Hashem promises Abraham that his descendants will inherit the land of Israel and they will become great. They will become a great nation. Hashem actually predicts, I mean, obviously Hashem knows everything, but Hashem tells Abraham that there will be an exile that his descendants will go through, and that is the Egyptian exile, and that ultimately there will be that exodus and redemption, and the nation will be born and created as a great nation. The last point in the parsha is Sarah. Okay, so Avram has no children. Abraham is pushing 100. Sarah is pushing 90, and they are childless. They don't have children. So they want to have children, of course. And Sarah has a maidservant named Hagar, who is an Egyptian. And Sarah suggests, look, I'm old. I'm not having any kids. We want our legacy to live on. How about you marry this Egyptian maidservant, and maybe at least you'll have a descendant. Meaning it won't be from Avram and Sarah, but at least Avram will have a legacy to leave on. So Avram accepts that kind of like guidance or idea, and Hagar becomes pregnant, and Hagar has a child. But, so keep in mind, Hagar is a maidservant. Hagar is supposed to be subservient, so to speak, to Sarah, who's her boss, who's her employer, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So now she has a baby, and all of a sudden she becomes very full of herself. Because I had a baby with Avram right away, and you were married for decades, it must be that I'm more righteous than you. And she kind of lost her perspective on what her place is over here, and became very haughty, and that was very haughty, and that was very painful and offensive to Sarah to see her maidservant acting that way. You can understand her perspective. You can understand her pain of 90 years without having a kid, and then the maidservant has one right away. So ultimately, Hagar doesn't feel welcome anymore and runs away. And she runs away. She's by this well out in the desert, and an angel of Hashem comes to her and says, "What are you doing here?" And she says, "I'm running away from Sarah." And the angel of Hashem says, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself to her domination," and then gives her a bracha, Hagar, a bracha. "I will increase your offspring, and they will not be counted because of abundance," meaning there will be so many descendants of Hagar that it will be too many to count. And then the angel of Hashem said to her, "Behold, you will conceive and give birth to a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, which means Hashem heard, because Hashem has heard your prayer." Okay, so that's the beginning of a blessing. The end of that blessing takes a very dark turn when the angel describes what Yishmael's descendants are going to be like. V'hu yiyeh pera adam, yado bakol v'yad kol bo, v'al pnei kol echyav yishkan. "And he shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And over all his brothers shall he dwell." So that blessing took a turn right there. It's like you're going to have a ton of descendants, but they're not going to be good people. They're going to be a para adam, and they're going to be constantly at war. And the commentators talk about the descendants of Yishmael, about the evil that they will bring to the world, as we see very evident right now, the descendants of Yishmael and the Arabs who are trying to kill more and more Jews. So there's a prophetic vision right there. Now, at the end, Hashem, by the way, I've been calling Avraham, and Sarah. Avram's name was Avram without a hey, and then towards the end of the parsha, Hashem adds the letter hey, and it becomes Avraham, and Sarah was originally Sarai, and then also got a hey and became Sarah. So just disclaimer in terms of the name. We refer to them what we know them by, Avraham and Sarah. Finally, at the end of the parsha, Hashem gives Avraham a blessing, a bracha, that he is going to have descendants. Again, that his descendants are gonna have the land of Israel, and he outright promises that Sarah is gonna have a son. And the reaction, as is known, is laughter. Avram and Sarah laugh as a reaction to Hashem's promise that Sarah is gonna have a son. The commentators say that Abraham's laugh was out of joy. Sarah's was a bit more skeptical. Sarah understood that she's 90 years old, far beyond the age that she could physically have children. So it's a shocking thing to be told. But ultimately, Hashem can do anything, and Hashem promised that they will actually have a kid, and that kid will grow into a great nation. So there's a lot of, there's so much of this. It's amazing how Avram's faith was tested. Can you imagine you're 100 years old and your wife is 90, and Hashem keeps giving you a blessing that your descendants are going to inherit the land of Israel? Like, what is your reaction? What is your reaction?
Just actually like you.
How could that be? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? How do you keep giving me that bracha? And actually, that's kind of Avram's reaction. One of the first times in the parsha that it says that, in chapter 15, verse 1, it says, after these events, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, fear not, Avram, I am a shield for you. Your reward is very great. And Avram said, Hashem, what can you give me, seeing that I go childless? And the steward of my house is Eliezer, meaning to say my maid servants, my workers are going to inherit me. I don't have any kids. And then Avram said, see, to me you have given no offspring, and my steward inherits me. Suddenly the word of Hashem came to him, saying, that one will not inherit you. Only him that shall come forth from within you shall inherit you. And he took him outside and he said, Ha beitna hashamayma usefar hakechavim imtucha lispar oisam ko yezarecha. He took him outside and he said, gaze now towards the heavens and count the stars, if you're able to count them. So shall your offspring be. And Avram's reaction was, Vehemen b'Hashem. He trusted in Hashem and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. He believed in Hashem. Avram didn't lose his faith in Hashem, even though he understood that, like, as of right now, it's looking bleak. He understood that Hashem can make a miracle.